Welcome back, friends. Today we're baking something that smells like childhood, church bells, and a wooden kitchen table in the countryside. Sweet Easter Paska. It's that quiet Saturday before Easter when the house wakes up earlier than usual, when flour somehow gets everywhere, and someone always says, "Don't slam the door. The dough is rising." And if these slow countryside mornings and family recipes feel like home to you, subscribe and stay with us. Here we bake with stories, a little flour on our sleeves, and a lot of heart. Well, I'm moving on to breakfast now. Nothing dramatic, just real morning food. Omelet with sausage and polenta on the stove. Very countryside. Very, we need energy before noon. Honestly, in Ukrainian homes, breakfast was never about aesthetics. It was more about surviving until lunch. Eggs have always been central to Ukrainian cooking. We've had chickens in almost every rural household for centuries, so eggs were accessible even when meat wasn't. An omelet was simply the quickest warm thing you could make before heading to the field. Crack, whisk, pan, done. The word omelet itself comes from French cuisine. And of course, France made it elegant. There's even that famous story about Napoleon Bonaparte stopping in a village and loving an omelet so much that he ordered all the eggs in town to be gathered the next day to make a giant one for his army. I mean, imagine being that confident about breakfast. Ukrainian omelets, though, were more practical, often thicker, sometimes mixed with flour or milk to stretch them. Sausage would be added if the family had it, especially homemade, one after winter pig slaughter season. That was serious business. If sausage appeared in your omelet, you were having a good week. Now about polenta. Corn arrived in Europe after the 16th century. Following contact with the Americas, it spread fast because it grew well and produced reliable harvests. In Italy, polenta became a staple for rural families, especially in the north. It was everyday survival food. In western Ukraine, especially in the Carpathian region, cornmeal dishes similar to polenta became common too. Shepherd communities relied on it because it was filling and affordable. Stirring it over fire in a heavy pot, that image hasn't changed much in centuries. What did Ukrainians traditionally eat for breakfast? It depended on the season. In rural areas, leftover porridge from the night before, bread with lard, fresh milk, cottage cheese, something warm in winter, something simple in summer. Breakfast was fuel.
Васильович, як у вас тут справи? Ну, йде, будете снідати.
I remember mornings when Grandma would fry eggs in a cast iron pan that was older than half the village. She never measured anything. Sausage pieces were cut unevenly because who has time for symmetry at 7 a.m.? Somehow, it always tasted better than anything perfect. Well, looks like everything's ready. So, let's eat. Truly. Just warm plates, strong coffee, and that first bite when the whole kitchen goes quiet for a second. Bon appetit to us. We've had breakfast, and now the real work begins, Paska time. In Ukraine, Paska is traditionally baked on Holy Thursday or Holy Saturday before Easter. Not randomly, there's rhythm to it. The house is cleaned, people try not to argue, and there's this quiet focus in the air, like everyone knows something important is happening.
Господи Боже мій, поможи всім людям і мені, аби мої пасочки вийшли файні, як сонечко. Мирний час почати і все файно споживати.
The tradition of baking Easter bread goes back centuries. Christianity brought the ritual meaning, but sweet festive bread itself is older than that. In Ukrainian villages, Paska became the central food of Easter, the symbol of resurrection and blessing. That's why it's tall, round, almost proud-looking. People here bake many at once because one is never enough. One for the family table, one to take to church for blessing, sometimes one for godparents, neighbors, or relatives. In big families, ovens worked all day. And yes, women coordinated schedules like military strategists so everyone could use the oven. Traditionally, the dough was rich: eggs, butter, sugar, especially after Lent. Lent in the Orthodox and Greek Catholic traditions is strict, so Easter morning was a release. After weeks without eggs and dairy, Paska felt luxurious. In many regions, women would wake up before sunrise to knead the dough. There's an old belief recorded by ethnographers that you shouldn't bake Paska in a bad mood. People genuinely believed the dough would feel it. Honestly, after baking enough times, I kind of understand that logic. The word Paska itself is connected to Pascha, meaning Easter. Similar words appear across Eastern Europe. In Italy, there's colomba, shaped like a dove. Different forms, same idea. Festive bread, marking resurrection. Historically, Paska was taken to church in a woven basket, along with eggs, cheese, butter, sometimes sausage. The basket would be covered with embroidered cloth. That cloth mattered. Families kept them for generations. You didn't show up with a plastic bag. There are 19th century ethnographic records describing how women would test the oven heat with a handful of flour tossed inside. No thermometers, just experience. If the flour browned too fast, you waited. If it stayed pale, you added wood. Very intuitive science. And if you love these slow kitchen stories, the traditions, the real village rhythm without filters, subscribe and stay with us. We're keeping these recipes alive, one batch at a time, flour on our hands, and a little laughter in between. My grandmother used to say, "The dough needs silence." She would literally tell us to stop running. Doors closed gently. No loud noises. There's no scientific proof that slammed doors ruin yeast, but somehow nobody wanted to test it. During Soviet times, religious traditions were discouraged, yet many families continued baking Paska quietly at home. Ethnographers and historians note that Easter food traditions survived even when public religious expression was limited. Kitchens became quiet places of resistance. The ingredients themselves reflect prosperity cycles. More eggs meant a good household year. Butter wasn't cheap historically. So, a rich Paska demonstrated care and preparation. You planned for it. You saved for it. In western Ukraine, especially in Hutsul regions, some paskas were incredibly tall, almost cylindrical. The height symbolized abundance. Baking those without modern molds required serious skill and strong wrists. What I love is how personal recipes become. Some families add raisins. Some refuse them. Some glaze with sugar icing. Some leave it plain and golden. Every house claims theirs is correct. Every house is convinced the others are slightly wrong. Even today, people share photos comparing crumb texture. Soft, airy strands inside are considered ideal. That fibrous structure comes from long kneading and proper fermentation. Yes, we analyze Paska like architecture. Okay, let's talk about the top of the Paska, because honestly, that's where personality shows. I usually braid thin strips of dough and lay them gently across the surface. Little crosses, small spirals, sometimes a full circle around the edge. It feels calming, like braiding someone's hair before church. Braided dough on top has deep roots in Ukrainian tradition. Ethnographers describe decorative elements shaped like crosses, braids, wheat stalks, even little birds made from dough. They weren't random. Wheat symbolized harvest and life. The cross reflected Christian meaning tied to Easter. In older village traditions, the decorations were made from the same yeast dough before baking. You'd attach them carefully so they rise together. Sometimes, people brush the top with egg wash to get that shiny golden finish. Simple, but very beautiful. In many regions, especially central Ukraine, people preferred a natural golden crust without icing. The beauty came from the shape and the braided details. It looked proud and slightly rustic. No sugar fireworks needed. The white sugar glaze became especially popular later, particularly in the 20th century. That glossy white top with colorful sprinkles you see everywhere now. It's a more modern aesthetic, still traditional in meaning, just visually louder. The glaze is usually made from powdered sugar and egg whites or lemon juice. Beyond decoration, it seals the top slightly and helps keep moisture inside. Plus, visually, the white icing symbolizes purity and celebration in Christian tradition. I love braiding because it feels meditative. You stretch the dough gently, you twist it, you lay it down carefully. It rises in the oven and holds that shape like it remembers your hands. That part feels almost magical every time. All right, I'm sending them into the oven. Now it's out of my hands. Literally. The waiting part begins, and honestly, that's the hardest skill in baking. My friend shows up with her little daughter, and she brought us a Paska too. That's very Ukrainian timing. Food arriving exactly when more food is already in progress. Homemade Paska always feels like a quiet, I thought of you, wrapped in dough and memories. While everything's baking, I'm switching to something very real life. Hand-washing vyshyvankas and towels in a big basin. And yes, this is exactly that pre-Easter chaos where you suddenly decide everything in the house must be clean, even things you didn't plan to touch all year. In Ukrainian tradition, this comes from Holy Week cleaning, especially what people call Clean Thursday before Easter. It's that moment when houses are scrubbed, clothes are washed, and everything is reset like life is starting fresh again. Not just cleaning, more like emotional reset mode. Rustic, the embroidered ritual towel, is actually deeply symbolic in Ukrainian culture. It's used in weddings, blessings, bread rituals, icon decoration. Basically, it carries meaning for key life moments, not just nice fabric on a shelf. And vyshyvanka, same story. It's a traditional embroidered shirt with regional patterns that historically reflected identity, protection beliefs, and family lineage. Different regions had different motifs, not fashion, more like cultural language stitched into fabric. So when people wash them before Easter, it's not just laundry. It's preparation for the most important religious celebration of the year, a symbolic purification, making sure everything used in rituals is clean and respectful. And honestly, doing it in a basin by hand is its own experience. You stand there thinking, why do I have so many embroidered things? While your hands are freezing, and you start negotiating with reality like it's a business deal. Before modern washing machines, all of this was real physical labor. Wooden tubs, cold water, hands doing everything. So Easter cleaning wasn't about aesthetic. It was hours of actual work that marked the seriousness of the holiday. Ethnographers often describe Ukrainian embroidery as a cultural code. Patterns varied by region, sometimes even by village, and were passed through generations like visual memory stitched into cloth. Finally, time to hang everything out to dry. Honestly, this feels like one of those deep exhale moments. You look at the basin, the wet embroidery, your hands, and just think, okay, I did it. I survived Easter prep mode. Look at our hardworking horse out here, just peacefully plowing the garden like it's his daily meditation. In traditional Ukrainian rural life, horses were essential workers of the household. Before tractors, they literally carried the weight of farming seasons on their backs, especially in spring when fields had to be prepared fast.
Зараз принесу яблучко, але подивлюся там та й тут прийду. Наша чимнолька.
I grabbed him some apples, so I'm going to feed him now. He loves them, and he already knows it. So I swear he starts acting slightly dramatic when he sees me coming. Like, finally, service has arrived.
Лиська ти ба. Лиська ще гарний. Вау, яке гарний. Ай, яке гарний я. Не дав? За вухо тебе баба посіпала. Все собі, папа. Ви йдіть далі до роботи.
My little cat is officially bored of the kitchen situation at this point, walking there like he's supervising the entire Easter operation and judging our speed. Meanwhile, the whole house smells like fresh Paska now, so even he knows something important just happened.
Наші пташечки, зозуляточка.
The Paskas are finally ready, golden tops, soft inside, that slightly sweet vanilla yeast smell that basically turns the whole kitchen into comfort. You know that moment when you don't even want to cut it yet because it looks too proud? Yeah, that.
Пасочки мої. А так. Ще наші пташечки. Ой.
Right now, I'm brushing the top of the Paska with warm, melted sugar glaze, just to give it that soft shine. You know, that I've got my life together look. So I'm curious, how do you usually eat your Paska? Plain, with butter, with jam? Or do you go full traditional and keep it simple, like in old Ukrainian households? I feel like everyone has their own, correct version of this moment.
Жовтенька. Яєчка, ветко, що курочки нам несуть. Вам передайте ще Брендону. Тут. Дякую.
And before we disappear into eating this whole thing, thank you for watching this little Easter kitchen chaos with us. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and stay around. See you next time. And happy Easter vibes from our kitchen to yours. Today, we're out here in the countryside, fire on, cast iron pan ready, and we're making 3 fruit pies over one fire. No rush, just patience and heat doing their thing. And if you're into this kind of slow countryside cooking, fire, cast iron, and messy but real food moments, subscribe and stick around, because there's a lot more coming from this kitchen. Morning starts fast out here. No slow stretching, no scrolling, just real movement. My husband is already outside, digging into the earth, making 3 fire pit spots for the pies. The ground is still a bit cold, but he's working like it's completely normal to start the day with a shovel and a plan. There's something very old school about it, preparing fire directly in the soil, like people did for centuries before modern stoves. 3 pits, 3 pies, 1 fire mood. And I've already gone down into the cellar, basket in hand, just collecting what we need for the pies. Jars of jam, fresh apples, the whole let's see what survived winter situation. It's that quiet moment where everything feels slower, colder, and a bit more honest. In Ukrainian countryside homes, cellars have always been essential. Not decorative at all. Pure survival logic. They were used for storing potatoes, apples, pickled vegetables, jams, sometimes even meat preserved for winter. The temperature stays stable underground, so food lasts much longer. My husband is still out there working on the fire pits like it's his full-time mission of the day. Digging, adjusting, moving soil. Very focused, very, don't talk to me right now. I'm building something important energy. And honestly, Ukrainian men in the countryside are like that a lot. There's always something being fixed, rebuilt, dug, or improved. If there's no problem, they will still find something to just check real quick. It's almost a cultural stereotype at this point. The idea of a man walking around with tools in his pocket, just in case the universe suddenly needs repairing. And somehow, it usually does. In rural life, this made total sense historically. Houses, fences, barns, everything needed constant maintenance. So men naturally became the fixers of daily survival, always in motion, always solving something. Even now, that habit stays. You'll see someone going outside for 5 minutes and coming back 2 hours later because he found a loose board, a crooked fence, and suddenly a whole new project was born. And the funniest part is, if you ask what he did all day, the answer is always short. Just prepared a few things. Meanwhile, the entire yard has been redesigned. I think part of it is also mindset. If something can be improved, why leave it as it is? Even if it's already fine, there's always a better version waiting to be created with a shovel and determination. Look at this. I basically raided the cellar. A whole basket of jam jars and fresh apples. Just everything we need for the pies. And honestly, this is exactly how real countryside baking starts. Not with a recipe, but with what you find and turn into something delicious. Let's talk about fire pits for a second, because honestly, they carry this weird ancient energy. Like you stand near one and instantly feel like you should be roasting something or telling stories from 300 years ago. And technically, that feeling is not random. Open fire cooking is one of the oldest human cooking methods, used long before modern kitchens existed. In medieval Europe, especially in castles and rural estates, food was often cooked over open hearths or large fire pits. Kitchens weren't separate rooms like today. They were big open spaces where fire was the center of everything: cooking, heating, even social life. In Ukraine, too, open fire traditions go way back. In rural households and early settlements, food was often prepared in large pots over fire in courtyards. The idea of cooking outdoors was just normal life before enclosed stoves became common. Fire pits also had a social role. People gathered around them, not just for food, but for conversation, planning, storytelling. Fire was basically the original meeting point. No Wi-Fi, just flames and gossip.
Можна. Дай рукавичка. Не можна.
Even royal kitchens weren't fully modern for a long time. In medieval courts, food preparation still depended heavily on open-flame cooking, roasting, and large-scale fire management. I kinda get it now. When you build a fire pit from scratch, it doesn't feel like just a cooking tool. It feels like you're creating a small temporary world where everything happens around one point. My husband already lit them. And honestly, look at this. The fire just caught and suddenly everything changed. The whole yard feels different now. It's that moment where simple holes in the ground turn into something alive. Right now, I'm cutting apples into small cubes for the pies. Just slow and steady, nothing fancy. There's something very calming about this part. Knife, board, apples, and that smell starting to fill the air already. Like dessert is quietly preparing itself in the background.
Мирославчику, це коникам. Давай, іди їх погодуй. Погодуй наші коники. А як там вогонь?
Поряд.
Можна вже зараз ставити казанчики?
Вже можна.
Ходи. Знаєте, що тобі таких давай? Трима.
In Ukraine especially, apples were common in home orchards, so they naturally became a base for pies, jams, and winter storage food. Simple fruit, but somehow always at the center of the kitchen. And I never throw the leftovers away. Any peels or little scraps go straight to our horses. They love apples. In rural life, nothing really gets wasted. Food scraps, peelings, even stale bread used to be part of feeding animals. Everything stays in the same circle. While I'm opening this jar of jam, quick pause. If you're enjoying this slow countryside cooking chaos, subscribe and stick around. There's more fire, pies, and real kitchen life coming. My husband is already placing the cast iron cauldrons into the fire pits so they can start heating up. And honestly, it looks so satisfying. That heavy metal slowly settling into the fire, like everything is finally getting into its place before the real cooking begins. Right now, I'm rinsing blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries, all of them going straight into the pies. Blueberries in Ukraine are actually very interesting, especially wild ones in the Carpathians. They grow naturally in forests and mountains, and for a long time, people would just collect them by hand during summer walks. Blackberries also grow wild in many parts of Ukraine, along forest edges, fields, even abandoned land. They've always been a kind of foraging fruit, something you just find while walking, often ending up with scratched hands and a very proud basket. Strawberries, on the other hand, became more cultivated over time. In home gardens across Ukraine, especially rural ones, strawberries were one of the first early summer rewards. Small, sweet, and always eaten faster than they could be picked. Now I'm pouring jam and berries into the cast iron cauldrons. And honestly, it already smells like something between dessert and childhood. This is the moment where everything starts to turn into actual filling, not just ingredients anymore. Cooking fruit like this is basically one of the oldest preservation methods in Europe. Before refrigerators, people boiled berries and fruit with sugar or honey to keep them for months. That's how jams and pie fillings were born, not as desserts first, but as survival. There isn't one single person who invented jam or fruit boiling. It evolved slowly across cultures. Roman and medieval European kitchens already had methods of cooking fruit with honey to extend shelf life. While the berries are doing their thing in the cauldrons, I'm moving on to the dough. And this is where everything starts to feel like a real pie. Flour everywhere, hands slightly messy, and that moment where you already know it's going to smell amazing later. Fruit pies are honestly one of the oldest comfort foods in Europe. The idea is simple: fruit wrapped in dough, baked or cooked over heat. But the versions of it go way back to ancient civilizations, where early pastry-like doughs were used more as containers than desserts. In medieval Europe, pies were very different from what we think today. They often had thick crusts called coffins that sometimes weren't even eaten. They just held the filling inside while it cooked over fire or in ovens.
Як ви граєтеся гарно.
Over time, especially by the Renaissance period, pies became more refined. In royal kitchens across Europe, fruit pies started appearing as seasonal desserts, often using whatever fruit was available at the time: apples, berries, stone fruits. There's something interesting here. Even royal courts didn't treat fruit pies as fancy invention, but more like seasonal tradition. In England, for example, apple pies became strongly associated with domestic cooking over centuries, not just elite cuisine. In Ukrainian culture, fruit pies were deeply connected to home and harvest. They were baked when fruit was abundant, summer and early autumn, and were a way to use seasonal ingredients before preservation methods took over. Rural Ukrainian kitchens would often turn berries and apples into fillings, jams, or pies because nothing could be wasted. It was practicality turning into tradition over time. There's also this funny thing about pies. Every household thinks theirs is the correct version. Some people like thin crust, some thick, some overloaded with fruit, some barely sweet. and everyone defends their version like it's law. Historically, fruit pies also became popular because they were practical for storage and transport. You could bake them, carry them, share them. They weren't fragile like some desserts. Very take-it-and-go food for its time. Now here's the fun part. We're not baking these pies in an oven. We're doing them in cast iron cauldrons over fire. And honestly, this feels like stepping into a much older way of cooking, where fire was the oven and the pot was everything. Cooking in cauldrons over open fire is one of the oldest methods of heat-based cooking. Long before modern ovens, people across Europe and Asia used heavy iron pots suspended over flames or placed directly into embers to cook stews, bread-like doughs, and even early versions of baked dishes. In rural Ukraine, especially in older village life, large cast iron pots were used for communal cooking. Soups, porridges, and sometimes baked doughs placed inside covered pots. Fire was the control system. You adjusted heat by moving coals around the vessel. The reason this method worked is actually simple. A sealed cast iron pot traps heat and steam, creating a mini oven effect. So instead of dry roasting, you get soft inside, caramelized edges, and that slow, even cooking that ovens later replicated.
Прошу. Смакуйте на здоров'я.
Okay, finally. Let's taste them. I've been waiting for this part the whole time, honestly. The smell coming out of these cauldrons is insane. Warm fruit, caramelized edges, that soft dough smell mixing with fire. It's one of those don't talk to me yet moments.
Мій, а я попробую який в тебе. Може, в тебе смачніше, ніж у мене.
I'm curious, how do you like your fruit pies? More juicy and soft, or slightly caramelized and firm like this? Because I feel like everyone has a very strong opinion on this, and nobody ever agrees.
Ну, ще морка тут.
And thank you for watching this whole slow fire cooking day with us, from digging pits to cauldrons to this exact moment of chaos and pies. It's been a full countryside story. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and stay around. More fire, more recipes, and more real-life kitchen moments coming soon.
Це гарний день. За те, що ти таки зробив нам гарне вогнище.